On a brutal night, a pregnant woman is betrayed and cast into the sea by the one who promised to love her. But someone saw and decided they wouldn't let the crime disappear with the waves. Now, amidst fragmented memories, hidden evidence, and a dark past, she prepares her revenge. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching us from. We'll continue. I promise this will be the best story you will ever hear in your life. The storm arrived without warning. The sky over Portsmouth Bay ripped open in white flashes as the wind howled among the coastal rocks. Marina held her 6-month belly with one hand and tried to balance with the other, her dark hair lashing her face, wet with rain and tears. The mansion perched atop the cliff gleamed behind her, its illuminated windows like indifferent eyes observing her despair. Roderick stood a few feet away, as impassive as a marble statue. His impeccable suit barely stirred in the wind, as if even nature respected him. Marina couldn't believe the words she had just heard. She couldn't process that the man she had married, only a year ago, the man whose child she carried in her womb, could be so cold, so calculating. "You were never part of my plans, Marina. This was all just a convenient arrangement. Your father needed an investor to save his company, and I needed a presentable wife to close deals with the old conservative businessman. Now that I have what I wanted, you are no longer useful." The words echoed in Marina's mind like funeral bells. She recoiled a step, her shoes slipping on the wet stones. Roderick took a step forward, not to help her, but to continue speaking, his voice sharp as broken glass. "Camilla will take your place. She is more suited to my lifestyle. More sophisticated, more connected, more useful. You were just a temporary piece on the board, Marina, and temporary pieces need to exit the stage when they are no longer needed." Marina felt the world spin. Camilla, her best friend since adolescence, the chosen godmother for the baby on the way, the woman who had been by her side through every important moment of the past few years, was involved with her husband. The betrayal was double, triple, infinite. "You can't do this," she whispered, her voice almost swallowed by the storm's roar. "We have a child on the way. You swore to love me, to protect me." Roderick laughed, a dry, cruel sound. "Oaths are words, Marina. Just words, and words mean nothing in the real world. In the real world, what matters is power, influence, connections, things you never truly gave me. Your father lost his company even with my investment, so even that usefulness is gone." Marina tried to take another step back, but the cliff edge was closer than she imagined. Her foot found empty air, and she felt pure terror shoot through her body. Roderick did not move to help her. He merely watched, his dark eyes devoid of any emotion, as she struggled to regain her balance. In that moment of absolute panic, Marina managed to grab onto a rock ledge, but the momentum sent her sliding down the steep slope. She rolled for yards, hitting stones, branches, and roots, until she finally plunged into the shallow, turbulent waters of the cove below. Darkness swallowed her as the current pulled her away from the shore, her unconscious body floating like a rag doll in the violent waves. What Roderick didn't know, what he couldn't imagine as he turned his back and calmly walked back to the illuminated mansion, was that someone had witnessed everything. A few yards away, hidden among the trees of the coastal redwood forest that covered the hillside, a man watched through the lenses of his professional camera. Every word spoken, every cruel expression on Roderick's face, every second of the moment Marina lost her balance, all was recorded in high-definition video. Julian Foster was known in the region as the Hermit of the Cliffs. After years working as a private investigator in London, he had isolated himself in a rustic cabin hidden on the Portsmouth Bay coast, far from people, far from problems, far from the civilization that had deeply disappointed him. But even in isolation, his investigative instincts had never completely disappeared. He still observed, still documented, still saw things others preferred to ignore. And that night, he had seen too much to simply turn his back. Without a second thought, Julian put his camera in a waterproof bag, strapped it to his back, and began to descend the steep slope towards the cove. His feet knew every stone, every branch, every inch of that coast he had explored during years of solitude. The rain made everything more dangerous, but he didn't hesitate. Something greater than his chosen misanthropy propelled him forward. Reaching the small pebble beach where he kept his boat anchored, Julian quickly untied it and rowed hard against the waves, following the direction where he had seen Marina's body being dragged. The headlamp on his forehead cut through the liquid darkness, searching. Finally, a few yards from shore, he saw her, floating face down, completely motionless. Julian pulled Marina into the boat with the strength of years of physical labor in isolation. She was cold, drenched, but still breathing faintly. He turned her body to her side, checked her airways, began chest compressions he had learned in old trainings. Salt water gushed from her mouth, and Marina coughed violently, returning to consciousness for a brief moment before passing out again. "It won't end like this," Julian murmured, as he rowed back to shore, battling the storm that seemed determined to stop him. "Not while I can do something." He managed to bring Marina to his hidden cabin in the forest, a refuge built with salvaged wood and creativity, invisible to anyone who didn't know exactly where to look. Inside, he lit the wood stove, wrapped Marina in dry blankets, and prepared hot herbal tea that he grew in his small garden. She remained unconscious for hours, her body fighting against the shock, the cold, the trauma. While caring for her, Julian connected the camera to his old but functional laptop and watched the recording. Every word from Roderick was clear. Every second of Marina's fall was documented. And as he watched, old memories resurfaced in his mind. Memories of another case years ago involving the same, Roderick Mendez. A corporate scandal Julian had tried to expose, only to be discredited, sued, and professionally destroyed. Now fate was giving him a second chance. Marina stirred slightly under the blankets, a low moan escaping her lips. Julian approached, checking her vital signs with the experience of someone who had lived alone long enough to learn basic emergency medicine. She was stable. The baby, from what he could assess without proper medical equipment, also seemed to be fine. When dawn broke, the storm had passed, leaving only the gentle sound of the waves and the singing of birds. Marina slowly opened her eyes, disoriented, not understanding where she was or how she had gotten there. Julian was sitting by the window, watching the sea, a steaming cup of coffee in his hands. "Where am I?" Marina whispered, her voice hoarse. "What happened?" Julian turned, his tired eyes meeting hers. "You're safe," was all he said. "For now, you're safe." But Marina remembered nothing. She didn't remember the argument, the revealed betrayal, the fall. Her last clear memory was of having dinner with Roderick, talking about names for the baby, planning the future. Everything after that was just darkness and confusing fragments of sensations. Julian watched Marina carefully as she tried to sit up, her hands instinctively protecting her belly. The amnesia was not completely unexpected, given the physical and emotional trauma she had suffered. He needed to decide quickly how much to reveal and when to reveal it. "You had an accident in last night's storm," Julian explained calmly, keeping his distance so as not to startle her. "I found you in the water near the rocks. I brought you here because it's the closest place. The hospital is miles away and the roads were impassable during the storm." Marina looked around the rustic cabin. Wooden walls covered with old maps, shelves full of worn books, electronic equipment that seemed out of place in that primitive environment. A large table occupied a corner, covered with papers, photographs, and what appeared to be surveillance equipment. It wasn't exactly what she would expect from a simple fisherman's shack. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice still weak but firm. "Why do you have all this here?" Julian hesitated. "My name is Julian Foster. I've lived here for 5 years. Before that, I was a private investigator in London. Now I just want peace. And me." Marina touched her head, feeling a sore lump above her temple. "How did I end up in the water? Where's my husband? Roderick must be desperately looking for me." Julian's expression hardened, almost imperceptibly. He thought of the recording on his camera, of the man who had coldly watched his pregnant wife fall from the cliff. Desperate was not exactly the word he would use to describe Roderick Mendez. "Do you remember anything about last night?" Julian asked carefully. Marina closed her eyes, trying to force the memories back. Fragments appeared. Dining with Roderick. No. Waiting. For Roderick for dinner. He had arrived late, tense, worried. He had said they needed to talk about something important. After that, only fog and confusion. "I can't remember," she admitted, frustration evident in her voice. "Everything is jumbled. I need to go home. I need to see my husband." Julian stood up and walked to the window, watching the calm sea that had been so violent the night before. He needed time to think, to plan. Showing her the recording now, in Marina's fragile state, could be dangerous for her and the baby. But letting her go back to Roderick without knowing the truth was also not an option. "The roads are still blocked because of landslides from the storm," Julian lied partially. The roads were indeed in bad condition, though not completely impassable. "The cleanup operation will take at least another day. Besides, you need to rest. You hit your head hard. You might have a mild concussion." Marina wanted to protest, but a wave of dizziness made her lean back on the pillows again. Her body ached in places she didn't even know existed. Perhaps Julian was right. Perhaps she needed rest before going home. While Marina rested, Julian left the cabin and walked to a high point where he could get cell phone signal, something rare in that isolated region. He needed to know what was happening in the outside world. He needed to know if Roderick had reported Marina's disappearance, or if he was pretending nothing had happened. A quick online search revealed the answer. Local newspaper headlines were full of the news. Businessman reports, pregnant wife's disappearance during storm. Roderick had filed a complaint with the police station in the early hours of the morning, claiming Marina had gone for a walk on the property before the storm and had not returned. Searches were being organized. He had even given tearful interviews to local television stations, the desperate and worried husband. Julian felt nauseous watching one of the video clips. Roderick perfectly played the role of the devastated husband. His voice choked as he pleaded for information about Marina's whereabouts. It was an award-worthy performance, and completely false. Returning to the cabin, Julian found Marina awake again, sitting at the table, curiously looking at the scattered papers. She held an old photograph, faded by time. It showed a younger man, recognizable as Julian, next to a beautiful woman and a small child. All smiled at the camera. "Your family?" Marina asked softly when he entered. Julian gently took the photo and placed it back in the drawer. It was. A long time ago. Marina realized she had touched on something painful and quickly changed the subject. "You said you were an investigator. What happened? Why are you here alone?" Julian sat heavily on a wooden chair he had built himself. There was no reason to hide his story. Perhaps it would even help establish trust when it was time to reveal what had truly happened the night before. 6 years ago, I was hired to investigate irregularities in a large import and export corporation in London, Julian began. I found evidence of tax fraud, money laundering, bribery of officials. I meticulously documented everything. I presented the complete dossier to the competent authorities. "And what happened?" Marina asked, intrigued despite her own concerns. The company owner had powerful connections, unlimited resources. Within a few weeks, I was the one being investigated. Falsification of evidence, extortion, harassment. Lawsuits appeared from all sides. My license was revoked. My name was dragged through the mud in all the newspapers. I lost clients, I lost credibility, I lost everything. Marina felt a pang of sympathy. "And your family?" Julian remained silent for a long moment. "My wife couldn't handle the pressure. The stares, the whispers, the doors closing. She took our daughter and left. I don't blame her. I was so obsessed with proving my innocence that I forgot to take care of them." "I'm sorry," Marina said sincerely. Julian shrugged. "Eventually, the accusations against me were dropped due to lack of evidence. Because there was no evidence, they were all fabricated. But my life was already destroyed. So, I came here. I built this place, and I swore never to get involved in other people's problems again." "But you saved me," Marina pointed out. That was getting involved. Julian looked at her, his eyes revealing layers of emotion rarely shown. "Some things are bigger than oaths we make to ourselves." The following days unfolded into a strange routine. Marina grew physically stronger, but her memories remained fragmented and confused. Julian watched her carefully, looking for signs that the amnesia was naturally fading. He knew he couldn't keep the truth hidden for long, but he also knew that the moment of revelation had to be just right. During this time, Julian continued to monitor the news. The search for Marina had intensified. Rescue teams scoured the coast. Divers explored the waters near the cliffs. Roderick appeared constantly in the media, always accompanied by an elegant woman who was introduced as the family's best friend, offering emotional support during the crisis. Julian recognized Camilla from the research he had done on Roderick's social circle. It was nauseating to watch the farce unfold publicly. One afternoon, as Marina helped Julian prepare dinner, something in her movements triggered a memory. She was peeling potatoes when she suddenly stopped, the knife falling from her trembling hands. "Camilla," she whispered, "I saw Roderick with Camilla. They were in the bedroom. They were kissing." Julian turned quickly. The memory was starting to return. Marina clasped her hands to her head, fragmented images beginning to piece together like a terrible puzzle. "I confronted him. I went up to the mansion during the storm to confront him. He laughed at me. He said I was naive. He said Camilla was more suitable for him." "Continue," Julian gently encouraged. "What else do you remember?" Tears began to fall from Marina's eyes as more pieces of memory clicked into place. She remembered being at the edge of the cliff, the rain lashing her face, Roderick's cruel words cutting deeper than any knife. She remembered the feeling of emptiness when her foot found air, the absolute terror of the fall, the icy water swallowing her consciousness. "He let me fall," Marina whispered, horror and disbelief mixed in her voice. "I was falling, and he just stood there watching. He didn't try to help me, he didn't shout, he just watched." Julian approached slowly, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Marina, I need to show you something. But first I need you to take a deep breath and prepare yourself. What you're about to see will confirm your memories." He went to the laptop and opened the video file. Marina sat beside him, her body tense, bracing herself for the worst. When the recording began to play, she watched in absolute silence. She saw herself on screen, pregnant and desperate, confronting the man she loved. She heard every poisonous word he said. She saw the exact moment she lost her balance, saw her own expression of terror, and most importantly, saw Roderick's indifferent face as she disappeared from his sight. The recording continued, showing Roderick looking down the cliff for only a second, before turning his back and calmly walking back to the mansion, checking his watch as if he had simply concluded a business meeting. When the video ended, Marina was trembling uncontrollably. Julian wrapped her in a blanket, prepared hot tea with calming herbs he grew in his makeshift garden. She drank mechanically, her brain trying to process the magnitude of the betrayal she had suffered. "He planned everything," she finally said, her voice surprisingly calm, considering the trauma. "It wasn't an accident, it wasn't a moment of anger. He planned to get rid of me." Julian nodded grimly. "And now he's pretending to be the desperate husband, organizing searches, giving interviews. He's built the perfect narrative, the wife who went out during the storm and tragically disappeared." Marina looked out the window at the sea that had almost been her tomb. "How long have I been here?" 4 days. 4 days. 4 days during which Roderick had built his farce, consolidated his position as a grieving widower, probably already planning how and when to formalize his relationship with Camilla without raising suspicion. 4 days during which Marina had been hidden from the world, temporarily dead to everyone she knew. An idea began to form in her mind, a terrible and brilliant idea at the same time. "What if I remained missing?" she said slowly. "What if the world continued to think I'm lost or drowned?" Julian looked at her with renewed interest. "Go on." "If I go back now," Marina elaborated, "it will be my word against his. He'll say it was an accident, that he tried to hold me, that he's suffering as much as I am. He has resources, lawyers, influence. What do I have? A recording he can claim is faked, edited, taken out of context." "But if you stay hidden," Julian completed, beginning to understand her reasoning, We can investigate, find more evidence, build a solid case. Exactly. Marina stood up, new energy flowing through her body, despite the emotional exhaustion. You said you were an investigator. You said you lost everything trying to expose corporate fraud. You also said the man responsible for your downfall had powerful connections. Julian tensed. What are you getting at? It was Roderick, wasn't it? Marina looked directly into his eyes. The man who destroyed your life, who fabricated evidence against you, who took everything you had. It was Roderick Mendes. Julian did not answer immediately, but his silence was confirmation enough. Marina continued. Then we have something in common. We were both destroyed by him. And now we have a chance to get justice. Julian walked to the window, looking at the horizon where the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in oranges and pinks. Justice, he repeated bitterly. I tried to get justice before. You saw how that ended? Alone in a cabin my family destroyed, my name tarnished. This time it's different, Marina insisted. This time we have irrefutable video evidence. This time he made a mistake so big, so public, that he won't be able to escape. And you're willing to stay hidden? Julian turned to face her. Pretend to be lost or worse while your husband lives his life, while Camilla takes your place? Marina placed her hands protectively over her belly. For my child, I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I want him to grow up in a world where he knows his mother fought for truth, for justice. Not in a world where the father who tried to discard him before he was even born is free and powerful. Julian studied Marina for a long moment. He saw determination in her eyes, an inner strength that the traumatic experience had revealed instead of destroying. She reminded him of someone he had known a long time ago. She reminded him of who he himself used to be before he gave up. All right, he finally said. Let's do this. But the right way. Methodical, careful, leaving no room for error. Roderick is dangerous and well-connected. 1 false step, and he'll destroy us both. Where do we start? Marina asked. Julian opened a drawer and pulled out a small cell phone she recognized immediately. It was hers. I found this in the inner pocket of your coat when I rescued you. It's water damaged, but I repaired it as best I could. I managed to recover some data before the circuits completely failed. He handed the phone to Marina. She turned it on with trembling hands, navigating through the apps until she found the voice recorder. Her heart almost stopped when she saw the last recording dated the day before the storm. With trembling fingers, she pressed play. Roderick's voice filled the cabin clear as crystal. Once she's gone, everything will be ours. The mansion, the accounts, the investments. Her father is already completely financially dependent on me. When Marina is no longer in the way, I'll take full control of the company too. Camilla's voice responded, equally clear. And what about the baby? Don't you feel anything for your own child? An inconvenient heir from a marriage that should never have existed, Roderick replied coldly. It will be better for everyone if they disappear together. An accident, in the storm, a tragic moment of carelessness. These things happen. The recording continued, detailing plans, financial movements, forged documents, offshore accounts where they intended to transfer funds. It was a complete confession, not only of the intent against Marina, but of years of corporate fraud, manipulation, and elaborate schemes. When the recording ended, Marina and Julian looked at each other. They had more than enough evidence. They had a bomb. How did you get this? Julian asked, impressed. Marina gave a bitter smile. 3 weeks ago I started noticing strange things. Calls Roderick would abruptly end when I walked into the room. Messages he would hide. Secret meetings. So I set my phone to record and hid it near his office. I caught a few conversations, but this one was the most revealing. I was going to confront him the next day, but then the storm came. You're smarter than he imagined, Julian commented with approval. I've been underestimated my whole life, Marina replied. By my father, who thought women weren't for business. By Roderick, who saw me as a decorative trophy. Even by Camilla, my supposed best friend. Everyone thought I was fragile, manipulable, disposable. It was time to prove them wrong. Julian smiled for the first time since Marina had woken up in his cabin. Then we'll prove it. But we need more than recordings. We need financial documentation, paper trails, witnesses, everything that can corroborate what we already have. How do we do that without revealing I'm alive? Marina questioned. Julian was already opening his tablet, accessing programs and databases Marina didn't even know existed. You leave the investigative part to me. I've spent years perfecting the art of finding hidden information. Roderick is careful, but no one is perfect. Everyone leaves traces. While Julian worked, Marina watched the search teams in the distance through the window, their flashlights blinking like fireflies in the growing darkness. They were looking for a body they would never find. They were looking for a victim who was very much alive and very determined to become the architect of her own revenge. 2 weeks passed since Marina had woken up in Julian's cabin. In that time, the transformation had been remarkable. The fragile, confused woman of those first days had given way to someone focused, determined, strategic. She absorbed everything Julian taught her about investigation, about tracing financial movements, about building solid cases based on irrefutable evidence. Meanwhile, the media circus surrounding her disappearance had reached epic proportions. Roderick continued his masterful performance as a heartbroken husband. He had created a foundation in Marina's name to help pregnant women in precarious situations. He gave weekly interviews, keeping the story alive in the public consciousness. He had offered a substantial reward for information about her whereabouts. Marina watched it all with a mixture of anger and morbid admiration. He was truly very good at what he did. If she didn't know the truth, if she hadn't seen the recording, if she hadn't heard his own cruel words, even she might believe the performance. Camilla also played her part perfectly, the devoted best friend, offering a shoulder to cry on for Roderick in his moment of grief. Cameras frequently caught them together, always respectfully, always maintaining appropriate distance. But any attentive observer could see the connection between them. The media was already subtly beginning to speculate if, in time, that friendship might turn into something more. It would be a beautiful story, commentators said, love born from the ashes of tragedy. This makes my stomach churn, Marina commented one evening, watching another tearful interview with Roderick. How does he sleep at night? Men like Roderick don't lose sleep over conscience, Julian replied, his fingers flying over the keyboard as he traced another suspicious transaction. They convince themselves their actions are justified, necessary, even noble in some twisted cases. Did you find anything new? Marina asked, coming to sit beside him. Julian pointed to the monitor. Look here. 3 days before the storm, Roderick transferred a significant amount to an account in the Cayman Islands. On the same day, Camilla made a similar transfer to the same account. 2 days later, another transfer, this time from your father's company's corporate account. Marina studied the numbers, her mind now trained to see patterns that would have gone unnoticed before. He was draining the company even before I disappeared. Probably started as soon as my father signed those documents transferring administrative powers to him. Exactly, Julian confirmed. And there's more. I discovered that Roderick has at least 2 other companies registered in tax havens. Officially, they belong to strawmen, but the transaction patterns are unmistakable. It's money laundering on an impressive scale. This is what you were investigating before, Marina realized. When he professionally destroyed you. Julian nodded grimly. I was so close to exposing him. I had 90% of the evidence I needed, but he discovered me before I could present everything. He moved fast, used his contacts, discredited me before I could defend myself. I learned that against men like Roderick, you can't attack halfway. You have to have absolutely everything, ironclad, irrefutable, presented at the perfect moment. And now we have everything, Marina stated confidently. Almost everything, Julian corrected. We have the recordings, we have the video, we have evidence of financial fraud. But there's something that still bothers me. Roderick is meticulous. Why would he be so careless as to discuss his plans where he could be recorded? Marina considered the question. Arrogance? He always completely underestimated me. He never imagined I would be capable of suspecting anything, let alone taking steps to protect myself. Perhaps, Julian admitted, but I'm learning that with people like him, there are always layers. There's always something we haven't seen yet. We need to be prepared for surprises. The surprise came 3 days later, in the form of an anonymous call Julian received on one of his burner phones. The voice on the other end was female, nervous, clearly using a modulator to disguise her identity. "You're investigating Roderick Mendez," the distorted voice stated. It wasn't a question. Julian, always cautious, neither confirmed nor denied. "Who are you, and what do you want?" "I'm someone who worked for him, someone who saw too much and who is now afraid of what he can do. If you're really building a case against him, I have information you need. Documents he doesn't know were copied, recordings of meetings, evidence of bribery, extortion, manipulation of legal proceedings." "Why help now?" Julian asked suspiciously. "And why anonymously?" "Because I saw what he did to his wife." The voice trembled slightly. "Marina was kind to me. She always treated me with respect when she came to the office. Roderick thinks everyone believes his story, but I know the truth. I saw his and Camilla's plans. I knew what they intended to do, and I did nothing to stop it." "You're the secretary," Marina whispered, overhearing the conversation. "Beatrice." The voice hesitated. "Marina is alive? Please tell me she's alive." Julian looked at Marina, who nodded affirmatively. "She's alive, she's safe, and she's building a case against her husband." The relief in the modulated voice was palpable even through the distortion. "Thank God. I couldn't live with the idea that she and the baby, that I could have prevented it." "Can you meet us?" Julian asked. "In person. We need to verify the information you have." "Not yet. Roderick has been watching me closely lately. He's paranoid, thinking someone is investigating. But I can leave a package in a safe location. Physical documents, USB drives with digital files. Everything I managed to gather in the 3 years I worked for him." Julian provided instructions for a safe meeting. Point, a public but discreet location, where Beatrice could leave the package without being easily traced. When the call ended, Marina was visibly emotional. "Beatrice was always so quiet, so reserved," Marina commented. "I never imagined she was paying attention to everything, keeping records." "The quietest people are often the ones who observe the most," Julian said, "and apparently she has a conscience, unlike your husband." 2 days later, Julian retrieved the package left by Beatrice. When they opened it, they found a treasure trove of evidence: fraudulent contracts, revealing emails, recordings of meetings where Roderick openly discussed corruption schemes, documents showing how he had systematically stolen from Marina's father's company, records of illicit payments to public officials to obtain government contracts. But the jewel in the crown was a specific document, a life insurance policy Roderick had secretly taken out in Marina's name just 2 months prior, naming himself as the sole beneficiary. The insured value was astronomical, enough to cover all his hidden debts and still leave a considerable fortune. "He planned everything in advance," Marina said, looking at the document with growing horror. "It wasn't an impulse. It wasn't anger in the moment. He decided to get rid of me and profit from it. And that changes everything," Julian added. "This transforms the case from abandonment in danger into something much more serious. With this policy, it's clear there was premeditation, financial planning. The courts will not tolerate this." Marina held the document with trembling hands. To think that the man she had married, the father of her unborn child, had coldly calculated her value as more useful dead than alive, was a betrayal that cut deeper than any other. "How much longer?" she asked, her voice firm despite the pain. "How much longer do I need to stay hidden?" Julian carefully organized the documents. "We're almost there, but we need a perfect presentation strategy. We need the media, public opinion, legal authorities, all aligned. When you reappear, it has to be at a moment that maximizes impact and minimizes Roderick's chances of escaping or manipulating the narrative." The perfect opportunity arose 3 weeks later, when Roderick publicly announced he would host a large charity event in Marina's memory. It would be a gala dinner at London's most prestigious venue, attended by officials, influential businessmen, media representatives, and public figures. All money raised would go to the foundation he had created in his disappeared wife's name. "It's perfect," Julian said when they saw the announcement. "Maximum public exposure, Impossible to control the narrative, impossible to escape. If you appear there, with all the evidence we have, he won't be able to manipulate the situation. Marina agreed, but there was evident nervousness in her eyes. The baby now moved constantly within her, reminding her of what was at stake. Am I ready? Will I be able to face him, Camilla? All those who believed the lies. Julian placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. You survived a fall from a cliff during a storm. You survived the betrayal of the man you loved. You survived weeks of uncertainty and fear. You are stronger than you imagine, Marina, and you won't be alone. In the days leading up to the event, Julian made the final preparations. He contacted a trusted lawyer, someone from his time as an investigator who still believed in his integrity. He organized all the evidence into a meticulously arranged dossier. He made backup copies of everything in multiple locations. He discreetly contacted investigative journalists known for their integrity. Beatrice continued to be a valuable source of information from within Roderick's operation. She reported that he was becoming increasingly paranoid, hiring private investigators to find out if anyone was digging into his business. Ironically, one of these investigators was a former colleague of Julian's who discreetly warned him about the situation. Roderick knows something is happening, Beatrice informed in one of her coded calls, but he can't identify the threat. He's nervous, making mistakes. Yesterday, he argued with Camilla in front of several people in the office. The veneer of respectful mourning is starting to crack. That works in our favor, Julian replied. The more unstable he becomes, the less credible he will be when he tries to defend himself. The night before the big event, Marina stayed awake for hours, watching the sea from the window of the cabin that had become her refuge. So different from the luxurious mansion where she had lived with Roderick, that simple space had given her something all the money in the world couldn't buy. Clarity, purpose, inner strength. I'll miss it here, she confessed to Julian, who was making coffee while reviewing the final plans for the 100th time. Julian looked around the cabin he had built with his own hands. It will still be here when you need peace. This will always be your home too if you want. Marina smiled, touched by the kindness of the man who had been a complete stranger only weeks ago, but who was now her most trusted ally, her protector, perhaps even her friend. What will you do after all this is over? Marina asked. Will you go back to London? Resume your career as an investigator? Julian remained silent for a long moment, considering a question he himself had avoided thinking about. I don't know. I've spent so long running from the past that I don't know if I still know how to live in the present. But maybe it's time to try. On the day of the event, Julian took Marina by boat along the coast to a point where they had parked a discreet car weeks earlier. She wore simple clothes, a scarf partially covering her face, sunglasses. Despite her prominent advanced pregnancy belly, no one recognized her on the busy streets of London. They first went to the lawyer's office, a man named Dr. Robert Sterling, known for his unwavering integrity and history of winning difficult cases against powerful adversaries. When Marina entered his office, Dr. Robert couldn't hide his shock. My goodness, he murmured. The whole country thinks you're lost, probably drowned. And here you are, alive and well. Not exactly well, Marina replied, but alive, yes, and ready to fight. She and Julian spent the next few hours presenting all the evidence. Dr. Robert listened in growing silence, his expression shifting from shock to horror to firm determination. When they finished, he leaned back in his chair, processing everything he had heard and seen. This is the most extraordinary case I've ever encountered, he finally said, and I am absolutely sure we will win. Roderick Mendez will finally pay for everything he has done, not just to you, but to all the other victims over the years. The plan was simple, but dramatic. Dr. Robert would arrive at the charity event with Marina. The moment Roderick stepped onto the stage to give his emotional speech about his beloved lost wife, they would enter through the back of the hall. The revelation would be public, impossible to deny or manipulate. When night fell, Marina wore an elegant navy blue dress that accentuated her pregnancy rather than hid it. She pulled her hair into a sophisticated bun. She carefully applied makeup. Looking in the mirror, She saw not the frightened, manipulated woman she had been months ago, but someone transformed by adversity into something stronger, more resilient. Julian, wearing one of his old suits that Marina had insisted on having tailored, waited in the room. When she emerged, he nodded with approval. "Are you ready?" Marina took a deep breath, placing her hand on her belly where her child stirred as if feeling his mother's tension. "I am." The hall was stunning when they arrived, decorated with white flowers and candles, giant portraits of Marina smiling scattered on the walls, a cruel irony considering the honoree was alive outside. More than 300 people filled the space, dressed in their finest attire, conversing in respectfully low tones. On stage, Roderick was impeccable in his bespoke tuxedo, Camilla beside him in a discreet but elegant black dress, maintaining the appropriate appearance of a grieving friend offering support. Cameras from various broadcasters captured every moment, transmitting live to the entire nation. Dr. Robert, Marina, and Julian discreetly entered through the back, staying in the shadows as Roderick began his speech. "Good evening, everyone," Roderick began, his voice perfectly modulated with just a touch of restrained emotion. "Thank you for being here on this difficult but important night. As you all know, almost 2 months ago, I lost my beloved wife Marina in tragic circumstances. She went out during that terrible storm and never returned. Every day since then has been a walk through darkness, an endless grief." Marina felt bile rise in her throat, hearing the lies flow so easily from his lips. Julian gently touched her arm, reminding her to stay calm, to wait for the right moment. "Marina was everything to me," Roderick continued, and Marina noticed he genuinely seemed to be crying. "The perfect wife, kind, loving. She carried our child, our hope for the future. Losing both was more than I can express in words." "Now," Dr. Robert whispered, "let's do this now." The three began to walk down the central aisle of the hall. Initially, people paid attention only to Roderick on stage, but gradually, heads began to turn. Murmurs of confusion spread like ripples. Someone pointed. A woman gasped. Roderick stopped mid-sentence, confusion crossing his face as he tried to understand the commotion. His eyes followed where everyone was looking, and his face visibly paled when he saw Marina walking towards the stage, very much alive, very much pregnant, very much determined. The hall erupted in chaos. People rose from their tables. Cameras swiveled frantically to capture Marina. Reporters shouted questions. Flashes fired from all directions. Roderick's carefully orchestrated charity event instantly transformed into something completely out of his control. "Marina," Roderick finally managed to speak, his voice failing in the microphone. "How you're alive." "Disappointed, darling," Marina replied, her voice clear and firm, echoing through the now silent hall as everyone strained to hear every word. "I imagined you'd be happy to see me. After all, I'm your beloved wife whom you've mourned so deeply these past few weeks." Camilla had retreated to the shadows of the stage, her face a mask of poorly concealed panic. Roderick tried to descend from the stage to embrace Marina, likely attempting to control the narrative through a public display of affection, but Dr. Robert interposed himself. "I wouldn't do that, Mr. Mendez," Dr. Sterling said calmly. "I am Mrs. Mendez's lawyer, and I strongly advise you to maintain your distance while we explain the situation to everyone present." "What situation?" Roderick demanded, but Marina could see the panic beginning to crack his facade of confusion. "What's going on? Marina, where have you been? I've been looking for you desperately." "Liar!" The word cut through the air like a blade. Marina stepped onto the stage, each step measured and deliberate. "You didn't look for me. You left me to fall from that cliff during the storm. I saw your face as I fell, and there was no desperation, Roderick. There was indifference." Gasps filled the hall. Cameras captured every second. Roderick tried to protest, but Marina continued. "You thought you had gotten rid of me and the baby I carry. You thought you could pretend to be the devastated husband, collect the life insurance you secretly took out in my name, and live happily ever after with my ex-best friend. But you made a mistake. Someone saw everything." Julian stepped forward holding a tablet. With a swipe, he projected the video onto the giant screens installed around the hall. The recording began to play. clearly showing the argument at the cliff edge, Roderick's cruel words, the moment Marina lost her balance, and crucially, Roderick's complete lack of reaction to help her. The hall watched in absolute horror. When the video ended, the silence was deafening. Then Marina tapped the tablet again, and the audio recording began, Roderick's voice filling the space. "Once she's gone, everything will be ours. The mansion, the accounts, the investments." Every word of the conversation between Roderick and Camilla played, exposing not only their plans against Marina, but years of corporate fraud, financial manipulation, elaborate schemes. When it finished, Roderick was visibly trembling, all blood drained from his face. This is a lie," he managed to say. "Manipulated, edited, fabricated. Marina, you're being manipulated. Who is this man? What does he want from you?" Julian stepped forward, meeting Roderick's eyes for the first time. "We know each other, Mr. Mendez, though I doubt you remember. Julian Foster, the investigator you destroyed 6 years ago when I tried to expose your fraudulent operations. You thought you had silenced me permanently, but fate has a strange sense of humor." Recognition and fear passed through Roderick's eyes. "You," he whispered, "this is revenge. You fabricated all this for revenge." Dr. Robert intervened, his authoritative voice cutting through the confusion. "Nothing was fabricated, Mr. Mendez. We have here original documents provided by your own secretary, Beatrice Sutton, who courageously decided to do the right thing. Fraudulent contracts, bribery records, evidence of money laundering. There's also the matter of the life insurance policy you took out in your wife's name 2 months before attempting to get rid of her." He produced a folder, handing copies to the reporters present, who eagerly snatched them up. "All of this evidence has already been handed over to the competent authorities. Warrants are being prepared as we speak." Camilla tried to slip off the stage, but Marina called out to her. "Camilla, don't run away now. After all, you're an essential part of this story. My best friend since 16. The chosen godmother for my child. The woman I trusted with all my secrets. How could you?" Camilla turned slowly, tears streaming down her face, though Marina doubted their sincerity. "Marina, I'm so sorry. I never wanted you to get hurt. It was all Roderick. He manipulated me too, said you were already emotionally separated, that the marriage was just for show." "More lies," Marina said calmly. "But unlike him, you still have a chance to do the right thing. Cooperate with the authorities. Tell them everything you know. It's your only way out." Camilla looked at Roderick, seeking guidance, but found only a man in total panic. All his arrogance and control evaporated. Realizing she was alone, she sank into a chair, burying her face in her hands. Police authorities entered the hall, clearly coordinated with the timing of the revelation. An officer approached Roderick with handcuffs. "Roderick Mendez, you are being detained for questioning in relation to multiple charges of fraud, embezzlement, and dangerous negligence." As Roderick was led away, still protesting, his innocence to the cameras that captured every second of his downfall, Marina felt her legs weaken. Julian was immediately by her side, offering support. "You did it," he whispered. "It's over." "No," Marina replied, looking down at her belly where her child kicked strongly, reacting to his mother's stress. "It's just beginning now." In the days and weeks that followed, the scandal dominated all news. The story had all the elements the media loved: betrayal, manipulation, a dramatic twist, and a heroine who had literally returned from the dead to seek justice. Marina became a symbol of resistance and strength, although she repeatedly insisted she was just a woman who refused to be a victim. The case against Roderick unfolded rapidly. With the volume of evidence presented, there was no possible defense. Companies with whom he had closed fraudulent contracts initiated their own lawsuits. Investors who had lost money in his schemes joined in. Roderick Mendez's carefully constructed empire crumbled in a matter of weeks. Camilla, following Marina's suggestion, cooperated fully with the authorities. Her revelations opened even more lines of investigation, exposing a network of corruption that went beyond what even Julian had imagined. In exchange for her cooperation, she received a reduced sentence and avoided prison, although her reputation was irrevocably destroyed. Beatrice, the courageous secretary, was publicly recognized for her role in bringing crucial evidence. Marina made sure to thank her personally, offering help with professional re-employment when everything was over. A month after the revelation at the charity event, Marina gave birth to a healthy baby boy. She named him Gabriel, a name she had chosen without consulting Roderick, a name that meant God's strength. Holding her son for the first time, Marina cried. But they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of relief, of accomplishment, of hope for the future. 6 months later, Marina was sitting on the terrace of her new home, a modest but comfortable property in Brighton, far enough from the hustle and bustle of London, but close to everything that mattered. Gabriel slept peacefully in his crib beside her, his tiny fists clenched as if still fighting battles, even in dreams. She smiled, gently touching her son's perfect face. Roderick's trial had finally taken place. With the overwhelming amount of evidence presented, the process was surprisingly swift. He was found guilty on all charges: corporate fraud, embezzlement, manipulation of legal documents, and deliberately placing Marina in danger. The sentence was heavy: years in prison without possibility of reduction, plus orders for financial restitution to all victims of his schemes. Throughout the trial, Roderick had maintained an air of offended indignation, insisting he was a victim of conspiracy, that Julian had fabricated everything for revenge, that Marina was being manipulated. But every witness who took the stand, every document presented, every recording played, only sank his case further. At the final sentencing, he finally broke, trying to beg for clemency, promising to change, claiming everything had been a terrible mistake. Marina had watched from afar, in a discreet corner of the courtroom. She felt no satisfaction seeing his destruction. She felt no anger or hatred. She felt only a distant sadness for the man he could have been, for the choices that led to his ruin, for the potential wasted on ambition and cruelty. When she left the courtroom, reporters surrounded her, asking for statements. Marina stopped, Gabriel in her arms, and chose her words carefully. "I don't celebrate anyone's downfall," she said sincerely, "but I celebrate that truth prevailed. I celebrate that our justice system, despite all its imperfections, can still work when courageous people stand up and do what is right. Beatrice, who risked everything to provide evidence. Julian, who came out of years of isolation to help a stranger. Dr. Sterling, who believed in me when he had every reason to doubt. These are the people who deserve recognition." "And what about your future?" someone shouted. "What comes next?" Marina looked at Gabriel, who chose that moment to open his enormous eyes and look directly at her. "Now, I will be a mother. I will rebuild my life on my own terms. I will honor the second chance I received by making it something meaningful." She kept that promise. With the assets recovered from Roderick's schemes, Marina established a genuine non-profit organization to help women in abusive or manipulative relationships. Unlike the fake foundation Roderick had created in her name, this one truly made a difference, offering legal support, temporary shelter, counseling, professional training, everything vulnerable women needed to rebuild their lives. Beatrice became the administrator of the organization, finding purpose and redemption in the work. Her meticulous attention to detail, the same skills that made her an efficient secretary, now served a worthy cause. Julian had remained close during these months. He testified at the trial, his words carrying the weight of years of investigative experience. After everything ended, Marina expected him to return to his isolated cabin, resume his life of reclusion. But something had changed in him too. One afternoon he appeared at Marina's house with news. "I've decided to reopen my investigation office," he announced. "Not in London, but here in Brighton. Small, selective, only cases that truly matter. I learned that running from problems doesn't solve them. It only postpones the inevitable confrontation with ourselves." Marina hugged her friend, tears of joy in her eyes. "And your family, did you get in touch?" Julian smiled, a genuine smile that completely transformed his usually serious face. "My daughter called me after seeing the news. She's 11 now. She hasn't completely forgiven me, not yet, But she's willing to try. We're meeting next month. It's a start. It's always a start, Marina agreed. Marina's father, who had been another victim of Roderick's schemes, was also in the process of recovery. His company, which Roderick had systematically plundered, was being rebuilt with recovered funds. But more importantly, his relationship with Marina had been transformed. He finally recognized his daughter's strength, her intelligence, her capability. He had offered her a leadership position in the company, but Marina gently declined. "I need to find my own path, Dad," she explained. "Not because I don't love you or don't trust you, but because I've finally learned that I need to build my identity, separate from the expectations of others." Her father, to his credit, understood and supported the decision. Camilla had disappeared from public life after the trial. Her social media accounts were deleted. Her presence in social circles evaporated. Marina had heard she had moved abroad, trying to rebuild under a partially new identity. Part of Marina felt sorry for her, but it was a distant pity, with no desire for reconnection. Some betrayals cut too deep for complete healing. As the sun set over Brighton Beach, painting the sky in spectacular oranges and pinks, Marina reflected on the extraordinary journey of the past year. She had technically been a victim of terrible betrayal, cruel manipulation, real danger. But she didn't feel like a victim. She felt like a survivor, a fighter, someone who had faced literal and metaphorical storms and emerged stronger. Gabriel woke up, his hungry chirps breaking the silence. Marina picked him up, preparing to feed him, marveling once again at the miraculous perfection of that small being. Roderick had tried to discard both of them as inconveniences, obstacles to his selfish plans. Now Roderick was in prison while Gabriel flourished, healthy and loved beyond measure. Marina's phone rang. It was an invitation to speak at a national conference on women's rights and combating domestic violence. She had become an important voice in these circles, her story serving as inspiration for countless other women facing similar situations. In the following months, Marina traveled, the country sharing her story, offering hope, advocating for systematic changes. Every audience received the same message. We cannot choose the storms we face, but we can choose not to sink. We can choose to fight, to survive, to thrive. Her words echoed in hearts across the UK. Letters arrived daily from women thanking her for her courage, asking for advice, sharing their own stories of survival. Marina responded personally whenever possible, creating a support network that went far beyond her formal organization. 1 year after that stormy night on the cliffs of Portsmouth Bay, Marina organized a small celebration at her home. She invited Julian, Beatrice, Dr. Sterling, her father, and some new friends she had made during the rebuilding process. As everyone relaxed on the terrace, Gabriel crawling among them under careful supervision, someone raised a toast. To Marina, who transformed tragedy into triumph. Marina shook her head, smiling. No, to all of us. To Beatrice, who chose conscience over convenience. To Julian, who chose to help, despite years of disillusionment. To Dr. Sterling, who fought for justice when it would have been easier to ignore. To everyone who chooses to do the right thing, even when it's difficult. These are the true heroes. As the night progressed, conversations and laughter filling the air, Marina stepped away briefly, walking to the edge of the terrace from where she could see the ocean. The sea was calm that night, so different from the furious storm that had almost taken her life. But she had learned that the sea, like life, was constantly changing. Storms came and went. The important thing was not to let oneself sink, to keep swimming, to keep fighting, to keep living. Gabriel crawled after her, pulling himself up on her legs, looking up with eyes full of absolute trust. Marina picked him up, holding him against her chest, feeling her son's heartbeat synchronize with hers. "You will grow up knowing your mother never gave up," she whispered. "You will grow up in a world where truth matters, where justice is possible, where storms do not have the last word." The man who tried to erase her from existence was now erased from his own history, forgotten by all except as an example of how far ambition without ethics can lead. Marina, whom he had discarded as weak and disposable, now had a voice amplified across the entire country. And Julian, the man who saved her simply because it was the right thing to do without expecting anything in return, was rebuilding his own life, reconnecting with his daughter, resuming his career with renewed purpose. He would always remain invisible to the world at large, preferring shadows to spotlights. But for Marina and all who knew the full story, he was essential, the foundation upon which her survival was built. Where a scream was almost silenced by waves, a new voice was born, stronger, louder, more alive than ever. And as that voice echoed across the country, changing laws, changing attitudes, changing lives, Marina knew that the storm that almost destroyed her had, paradoxically, been exactly what she needed to discover who she truly was and who she was destined to become. Dear listeners, we hope Marina's story has touched your hearts as much as it moved us to tell it. This journey of storm and rebirth reminds us that even in the darkest moments, when it seems all is lost, there is a strength within us that we don't always know we have until we are tested. To continue experiencing emotions like this, we have a special playlist with other incredible stories of overcoming, courage and justice. Find it by clicking here on the side. If the story of Marina, Julian, Beatrice and all who chose to do the right thing touched you in any way, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave your like. Every day we bring unique stories that explore the complexity of life, the power of truth, and the strength of the human spirit. We want to know what you thought, what part moved you the most if you know anyone with a similar story. We await you, in the comments, building together this community of people who believe that storms do not have to have the last word.